Good evening and welcome to ILTV Insider. I'm Maayan Hoffman. Tonight, Trump's 48-hour ultimatum has come and gone. Hamas didn't deliver the remains of the hostages. So what happens now? Should Israel act decisively or risk losing credibility? And while the world focuses on Gaza, Israel's Knesset just voted in a preliminary reading to apply sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria. Is this the right time for annexation or a dangerous distraction? Joining me tonight are Gedaliah Blum and Olga Deutsch to unpack what's really driving these decisions and what they mean for Israel's future. Thank you guys for being here. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Welcome back.
Yeah, wow, exciting. So, I mean, there is so much that has happened since the time that we last convened, but certainly what has happened most recently is this idea that last night Hamas sent over a body. It was supposed to be the third. We're supposed to have 12 hostages left today in Gaza, but of course we have 13. We found out it was faked. It was more remains of a soldier who had already come and been buried before. Trump gave this ultimatum 48 hours or else, but nothing seems to be happening. We're talking sanctions, maybe a little something or other. Is this right? Should we be acting at all or take this a little more seriously, Olga?
Olga, first of all, are we surprised, right? We're dealing with Hamas. There's nothing new under the sun. They've been doing this, including the psychological warfare against us since the beginning. So this is just an extended hand of that. And I think we will be seeing more of this unless there is a serious plan on how we're going to disarm Hamas, and not only militarily. So yes, we have to be privy to whatever will be the leadership of the U.S. administration, because they are, after all, drafting and crafting the day after and whatever it will look like in this corner of the world. But I do think that Trump leaves us some leeway of and some maneuvering space. And I do think that also by some retaliation or some sanctions, we also raise the bar in the negotiations of what is important and where the red lines for Israel. And I think that hostages, dead or alive, remain that red line that needs to be maintained in Israel as an absolute must, as a respect at the end of the day to what has happened on October the 7th.
But Gedaliah, do you agree with this? Because, I mean, I think you and I were speaking earlier about the fact that there's some, unverified potential footage out there that Hamas was, digging holes, putting bodies in, pulling them out. We clearly have been well over the 72 hours initial deadline of getting those live and then dead hostages out of Gaza. Is this the right response, to just sort of take it slow?
Well, I don't know what the right response is, but I will agree with Olga that this is what they do. A dog is going to bite, a dog is going to bark. Hamas is going to mix up body parts from old wars or before the war, mix it up. They're going to mix up Shira Bibas with someone else. They're going to give their own cousin and put him in a coffin, Mohammed such and such, and try to pass it off as a Jew. Like, these are sick people. I would never give my own people over. With that being said, I don't know what the future is going to bring. What I do want to know is, and I think that this is like I really wish I was a fly on the wall when Hamas agreed to give the 20 live hostages over. What happened? How did they do this? Because that wasn't the dog biting. That wasn't the dog barking. That was completely outside of their normal behavior. I want to know what that's about, because if we could know what that's about, maybe we could duplicate it and see what we could do in the future to disarm them and to do other things. But as far as what's going on, I'm glad I'm not in the position of leadership right now, because, I mean, you did say that Bibi Netanyahu has some leeway on what we could do and what we can't. I would actually disagree with that. I mean, President Trump built an army base in the South to be the watchdog of what's going on in Gaza, not to watch, Hamas and to watch us.
That's right.
They don't trust us. That's it. And I don't think we have any control over our country anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big question. People keep saying, has Israel become a puppet of the United States? Now, of course, Israel was always, to some degree, a puppet of the United States. We never had full leeway. And the question is what's really going on behind the scenes. What is your take on this? I mean, you work so much with the NGOs and the people who are working around these organizations. This military center that's been built in the South has many different people, including Kogat and others, working with it.
I wouldn't call Israel a puppet. I think the name of the game is strong alliances. And obviously, when there is such a strong administration in the White House, that has been backing us for the past 2 years when no one else has, then of course we're going to A, toe the line, and B, look at the bigger picture, right? The bigger picture is the war has come to an end. And now even our attention has to shift to what does Gaza look like the day after.
By the way, not to interrupt, but I don't blame Bibi for being a puppet or towing the line.
Understand.
I would do the same thing, by the way. I just want to make that clear.
Of course, it's what Trump will want this to look like. But that doesn't mean that there are no ways of whispering into the U.S. administration's ears or making suggestions. Let's not forget Trump is a transactional politician. He wants to win before anything else. He wants whatever he takes upon himself, he wants it to look like he is the master of art, right? So as long as we play that game, I do think that Israel has maneuvering space. Now, he's also a negotiator, meaning that raising the bar and lowering the price or raising the price this is how he does his thing. So I think if the bigger question is, what do we absolutely not want? What do we want? You know, there's an endless list of what we would like to have. What are the red lines? And I think that is where the conversation has to go. And you mentioned NGOs. NGOs are but a small part of that. How do we make sure that Hamas, as an idea, meaning any one Palestinian terrorist organization, because let's not forget, all Palestinian political parties also have armed wings, right? PFLP and Islamic Jihad are also bona fide terrorist organizations who took part on October the 7th, held hostages, shot rockets on us. How do we make sure they're not part of the day after?
Well, and I think the question of what's really going on in Gaza is actually very important there, because we know that even though Israel pulled back to about 53% of the Gaza Strip, and in all the other areas, it's not just that, Palestinians are living there. Hamas is actually ruling in those areas. Not only are they going after the clans or the militias that were, supposedly working to overthrow them, but they're actually exerting rule. They were part of building the technocratic board that is going to ultimately rule the Strip under, by the way, Egypt, President Trump, and all of these parties. We were talking about Amjad Shawa, who is the person who was elected. You know a lot about him. This is a man who is definitely not looking for peace with Israel.
This is a man who was the number 2 at a Palestinian organization called International Committee for Human Rights. Of course,
sounds
a lovely
nice.
Name. Sounds lovely.
Beautiful.
Important to mention, this is an organization that was created by Yasser Arafat originally, and then presided over by Sharawi, who is the head of Miftah today, yet another Palestinian NGO, and she has gone on record denying sex crimes on October the 7th. But he's also the general director of the Palestinian NGO Network, an umbrella organization of all NGOs on the Palestinian side, who talks with UN and coordinates with the PA, is center stage on all these issues. Now, this is the same person who held meetings with Yahya Sinwar back in 2017, who has, we have photo records of him hosting Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PFLP activists. Just until October the 7th, this organization was giving human rights trainings to Hamas police in Gaza. And now what Hamas is really doing, actually, because it's not about the NGO, it's not about this guy. What Hamas really is doing is saying, we now understand that the game has changed. It's not about arms anymore. The driving engine of Gaza moving forward will be the estimated 70 billion in reconstruction, and that will be the main engine. So now for them, the question is, how do we maintain our foothold on Gaza? Just through technocrats.
So you said the game has changed. I would actually change that up a little bit. I think the game board has changed. If you go back even 5-10 years, we were isolated. We had no relationships with the Arab countries. There was no kind of horse dealing between us and them in the United States. But now all of a sudden we have the Abraham Accords. We have Saudi Arabia that looks like they're coming in. Egypt we have this cold peace with that is whatever. And Turkey is going down. And the whole Middle East is shifting. And so I'll say the game board is shifting, and I would even push that our pundits, our government officials, especially the Israeli mentality, where everything is Israel-centered, to take a step back, and start doing the hard work instead of relying on the United States to negotiate publicly with Qatar. We need to work with them also. We need to help. We need to engage with them to show that we're strong, Because as long as we're hiding behind the United States and they're doing the deals with us, we may be on the game board, but we're just a pawn and all the pieces are moving around us and we're wondering what is going on.
But the key question is, let's not fool ourselves. Qatar and Turkey are no friends of Israel, right? And we know that that was the biggest concession on the Israeli side to this new plan, 20 points plan. How do we make sure, while Turkish and Qatari NGOs are already in Gaza operating, even though the day after is not yet fully, sketched out.
They're laying the groundwork right now.
So how do we make sure that they don't actually push us into exactly what was before, just under their control?
We need to show up. We need to shed sunlight on in the shadows of how they're acting, because the United States is fully invested in Turkey and in Qatar involved in this. And the one thing that Trump doesn't like to be is embarrassed and humiliated, okay? It's very hard that even right now that Trump is not humiliated by the actions of Turkey and Qatar. But if we're there and we have intelligence and we're interacting, we could shed a lot of sunlight onto this. I think that's where the engagement comes in, and to show up at the table to say, we're not going anywhere. We're strong and we're in control. You're not in control. I don't care if you have Al Jazeera. I don't care if you have 12% of the natural gas that America needs to power their AI systems that they want to beat China with. That's a big part of it. This is what I'm saying. The game board is much bigger.
That's when it becomes more complex for Israelis, because traditionally we're very good at military and tactics, right? We come in, we win, and we retreat. Now, this situation requires some really complicated and sophisticated diplomacy.
Yes and no. Yes and no, because this is not about Israel and the rest of the world or whatever it is. This is a war between civilizations. This is a war between Western civilization and jihad and wokeism. We have plenty of allies. We just need to activate them. So, yes, it's complex, but the war we're fighting, people are starting to open up their eyes and realizing we're just on the front lines. And if we go down, it's a domino effect.
It's because of what's happening all around the world. And it's actually very interesting to add another layer to this about what's happening with the Palestinian Authority, because Abbas, appointing his successor, a person who is seen, whether he is or not in the outside world, as much more moderate, able to engage with the United States, and also sort of pulling his stronghold and saying, hey, you're doing this technocratic board there in Gaza. We want to have some role, but we want to ensure our stronghold over the Palestinian territories in Judea and Samaria, which adds another very interesting layer to the whole discussion, in my estimation, because now they're trying to show, hey, we actually want to be a peaceful party. Again, whether they can or not is another question, but it's definitely the acoustics, as you said, that they're trying to put out there.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And speaking of that, go ahead. You had something to say?
No, I was just going to say that I think that the whole issue of annexation is local politics and nothing more than that. I mean, if we're notwithstanding what anyone in this studio would want, or, what we think is right, at the end of the day, we have seen exactly the same scenario just before the Abraham Accords were first signed. The whole issue was about annexation, and the world went berserk, right? Oh my God, Israel is going to annex, what is not legally theirs. And then, as a result, actually, or the counter result, we had the Abraham Accords. I think, and this is the maneuvering I was referring to, I am actually 100% sure that there is alignment with the U.S. administration, and that actually our government is doing two things at the same time. On one hand, Netanyahu is giving his more extreme parts of the coalition a talking point for their base, which is to discuss annexation.
You call them extreme.
Well, whatever. Look, on the center-right map, they are more towards the further right. So, it's just a fact, a political fact. But also for the American administration, we're basically raising the bar, because we are, if you'd like, escalating. And then the Trump administration will have to calm down, the fire, and then we will settle for something. So there's a lot of that, I think, as well. I've been interviewed a lot this week, which is mind-blowing to me, around Europe on the issue of annexation. They follow everything that goes on here, and I keep saying it's local politics. By the way, just like the ultra-Orthodox draft bill.
I don't think it's local politics at all. I think it has to do with the future of the state of Israel.
Do you think it will pass?
Here's the thing. Where we are now, I'll tell you, go back 7 months ago, I looked at the situation that annexation is a political decision that is going to involve a lot of political capital being spent, whether it's Israeli through the international community, what kind of pushback we're going to get, or our allies who are going to support us. They're also going to have to pay in certain ways. And honestly, most people around the world, most leaders are like, it's not worth paying the price. And I knew this, so I said, listen. There's actually an expert in indigenous affairs. Her name is Dr. Nan Greer. She's presented in the Knesset at the time when Governor Mike Huckabee was there, and she spoke about her experience working with the UN and other agencies and her family foundation and indigenous peoples. She said that there's an agency within the UN that is specifically for indigenous people. They have certain standards that they recognize certain people as indigenous, which creates a protection. They become a protected people. She said Jews check more boxes than any of the 50-plus indigenous peoples around the world that they themselves had passed. And she said, this is the way to go. We need, and this is, we put together a presentation to present to members of Knesset and to leaders of Yesha and the State Department and people there. And we said that we need to lay out the facts first, is that the Jewish people are indigenous according to UN's own standards, and we're a protected class. Period.
That's I mean, matters.
Right. This is what
it does. It does. No. I'm not saying in the UN, but the Trump administration that walked away from a number of UN agencies and made their own policy to Israel could then do the same thing. So the Trump administration could say, we recognize, according to the UN's own standards, that the Jewish people are indigenous to Judea and Samaria, and they're a protected class.
But I think in the end of the day, Gedaliah, that's very true. And I think the Trump administration has already, especially up until now with the ceasefire agreement in Gaza, has actually been supportive of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and has said, many members at least of his administration, that the land belongs to the Jewish people. The question isn't whether or not ultimately Jews should have sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. The question is really when and how.
Exactly.
And right now, passing in a first reading at a time when we're grappling with who are our regional partners going to be and how are we going to get those lost hostages back, the question is now really the time to hold this debate internally, politically, or otherwise? Because as you said, all the Europeans are asking you about it because it could be internal politics, but they don't know that.
They don't know that, and I'll raise you on this. Within the context, I cannot stop talking about this. $70 billion, and this is a conservative estimate of how much money will be injected, right? Imagine the corruption. We know that this is the reality in the Palestinian society. Now, one of the key roles will be played by the EU and European states, because that's ultimately they've been marginalized in the Middle East, so the only weapon they have is money. And now they're getting ready and discussing how to spend it. If we come to them with the annexation issue, which will make them go crazy, right? Because that's one
because they believe it will also get rid
issue.
of the two-state solution issue.
We won't be able to actually have a critical conversation with them, make sure your money doesn't go straight into Hamas hands. And I think between the two, right now, politically and internationally, and at our diplomatic low, right? Let's not forget
Are we really diplomatically low?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Let's not forget the UNGA. It doesn't matter what is the result of it, tachlis, right, on the ground. What matters is the titles that go around the world and the media, the emotion that it creates.
I get it, but Bibi said it. He said what they say out in public and what they say behind closed doors is a completely different.
Well, I think there's no question that our European allies understand that Israel is fighting, as you said, the battle between good and evil. And then everybody understands that we're the front line and that they know that if we don't stop it now, it's going to get to their front door. And
right, but they think a two-state solution is going to save their own butts.
And this is really the question, right?
They don't get it, though.
Just because they understand the risk doesn't mean they understand what really is the
because
solution.
they too are talking to their base. All politics is local politics. You have to think there is a reality today that a mayor of Copenhagen in Denmark cannot be elected without the Muslim vote. They need to think in most European countries, how do I get elected?
And that's why we, as Israelis, looking at our own future policy, cannot listen or take direction from foreign officials who are listening to their Muslim vote. Because we're supposed to be a light upon the nations. How are we supposed to be a light upon the nation when we're walking like dogs, where we're maybe walking in front, but we're looking back and seeing if we're walking in the right direction? We need to lead like leaders. We need to lead. We are now the strong power in the Middle East. and we need to leverage that.
But one of the things we need to leverage by being strong, I would argue, and Olga, maybe you can speak to this, is the idea of regional stability. And we have an opportunity right now on the table, potentially. I think you mentioned it, Saudi Arabia, interested in potentially joining the Accords, but also many other Arab countries. And the question becomes not, again, whether or not we deserve to have sovereignty, we should lead and show that this is our land, but what was the best thing for Israel diplomatically and politically now?
Politics is not about truth. You know, I always say this to everywhere I go and I give speeches and I talk to people. I say, I don't need to explain to anyone what the truth is. I know I'm right. We have the right to be here, and no one can deny that right? Jewish people, like any other people, have the right for our sovereignty. Politics is about pragmatism, and it's about winning. It's asking yourself, what do you want to achieve, and how do I best get there? By not burning bridges, because no one can operate in a silo, and us definitely not in this neighborhood, right? And we have a historical opportunity. I agree with you. The only thing that is different this time around is actually that it's not Europeans and Americans trying to broker a peace in the Middle East. It's actually together with Arab states, and that creates a historical opportunity, and then we have to be politically pragmatic. How do we build more rather than show to everyone that we are right? We know we're right.
Right, but
and
at the other side,
final comment. Go ahead, please. No, please, go ahead.
Okay, my final comment. On a practical note, we're going to take direction from the Arab countries who did not take one refugee into their country. They locked the people up in Gaza.
Not direction. We want stability.
No, that's not the point. They also want stability and prosperity. That's why they didn't allow any of the Arabs to leave Gaza and go into their own countries, because they know that they're the most destabilizing factor in the world right now. So we're going to listen to them, who won't take them in, and then all of a sudden we have to create a two-state solution that overlooks Ben Gurion Airport, which is our only port that could completely shut down our country.
Honestly, I don't think that the Arab states are a problem. I think that all of them who are not for jihad, right, and the Islamist pro-Iran future, they want stability and they're willing to make concessions like we have seen in the last 2 years. Our main challenge is saving U.S., the North America, and Europe as potential allies, not losing them.
So much that we could continue to debate today, and certainly we'll see in the next another few weeks when we come together again whether or not we move forward on any of these topics. But that is all the time that we have for this edition of ILTV Insider. A big thank you to you, Olga, and to you, Gedaliah, for being here tonight and for your very important insights. For more in-depth conversations on Israel, politics, and world affairs, check out the ILTV podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Maayan Hoffman. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.